right, last time, we saw and talked about how people came over from what country? Just from England to settle here. Did they fly? Did they take the train? How'd they get here? They sailed. Okay. Easy journey or hard journey?
That was hard.
It was a hard, long journey. What did they come here for? Why did they get in their boats, leave their homes, and come to this country?
Cold hard problem.
Well, that was a byproduct, but that's not what they came for.
For gold?
Nope, they didn't come for gold.
They wanted to
a better life.
take this land. They wanted to bring their families over here and have a bigger range to live.
That's exactly what happened, Lacey, but that's not why they left the country. What did you
They
say?
wanted a better life. It was their religion. They didn't like the way that they were kind of being controlled.
Yeah, the Church of England said you may not practice your own religion. You have to practice what is the religion in England. And they said, we don't like that.
Are we watching the second part?
We're going to watch another part today. Yeah.
So freedom of religion.
Freedom of religion. That's exactly why they left to come here. However, once they got here and they were able to establish their own life, do whatever they wanted,
They weren't alone.
They weren't alone. There were Native Americans here. They were not the first ones here, but they did start to be greedy around what they were interested in this country. So Lacey said they were interested in land. You bet they were. Someone else said something about what they were interested in besides freedom of religion. Did I hear something else? They also wanted to make their own lives prosperous now that they could practice their own religion, and they wanted land. Absolutely.
They wanted more control.
Pardon?
They wanted more control.
More control. Okay, true or false? The Puritans who came here and the Native Americans got along. Always.
No, not always.
Not always. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. True or false? Native American tribes always fought each other.
False.
True or false? False. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they were friends. Okay. All right. So after those first settlements in Jamestown and Plymouth, they divided up into 13 groups. And that was the initial 13 colonies, all the way down the east coast of the United States. So they divided themselves into kind of land masses, drew boundary lines, and made a map, and named their territory. So people who lived in Maine were different than the people who lived in New York. They weren't a cohesive group. Each section, each state was their own thing. All right, so remember that the people that came here were funded by Europe, by England and Spain, and England expected that the people that were here, when they found land, that land was going to be part of England. They had no intention for people to land here and say, we're independent, we're our own country. They didn't want that to happen. They said, sure, I'm going to give you money, you go find a new world, you go find more land, and that's going to be part of England. But that's not what the people wanted. So they were separate, they were independent, and in 1776, what England wanted is some of the money that was coming from what was being produced in this country. What was the first crop they learned how to grow?
Tobacco.
Tobacco. And England wanted tobacco, and England wanted to tax the selling of that tobacco. So I'm a settler, I would sell some to Hazel, I would charge a tax, and that tax went back to England. The people in this country said, not so quickly. Not so quickly. All right. So, understandably, the people in the 13 colonies didn't want to pay these taxes, so the King of England said, too bad for you, that's how this game works, and he sent soldiers over to this country to enforce that rule. These guys that came over, I don't have a picture of this, but you'll see it. They wore short little coats that were red, and I believe white pants, and they were called the redcoats. So that's how the people in this country referred to the people that came from England to say, you guys need to pay your taxes. All right, so much began to be produced here. So much began to be produced that trade was going from this country to other countries. So people were exchanging goods back and forth from other countries, putting it in boats. And but the biggest buying and selling of things was people. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is the picture I meant to show. The biggest buying and selling of things was people. They went to Africa, they got people, put them on ships. You know this story, right? They put them on ships. Do you not know this story?
Yeah,
No,
and
we
then
don't.
there was, and then like the slavery came in and all that.
Yeah, black people were not people in their eyes. They were goods to be bought and sold. So they put them in the bottom of the ship. They chained them together.
Yeah.
So they were peeing and pooping and eating or doing whatever they needed to do for the months it took to get from Africa over to this country. That's disgusting.
Yes. Yeah.
And many of them died as a result, right? But they weren't considered human beings. They were considered a property.
That would not fly by today.
Right. Oh, no, thank goodness, right? Right. So this began the slavery trade. During this time, okay, so the problem was who was in control? Was it England or was it the New World?
England.
Well, that's what they thought, and that's why they sent the soldiers over.
The world, actually.
Well, but there was a conflict.
Yeah.
The people living here said, we're in control. The people in England said, we're in control. Okay, so it boiled over. It boiled over in 1770, and in Boston, Massachusetts, there was a mob that gathered, and a bloody massacre happened. They called this time a bloody massacre. That's what they called it. Because, oh yeah, here's the pictures of the redcoats. You can see they have red coats and white pants. And they just, in order to solve that problem over who was in control, the redcoats started killing the people in this country. That was the very, very, very first act of the Revolutionary War. That was fought in order to determine who had control. You know, you'd think they could sit down and say, okay, I want this land, you want this land, let's talk about it. That's not what they did. They fought over it in the Revolutionary War. Okay, so during this time, Benjamin Franklin developed a delivery system so that the people in these 13 colonies knew what was happening, so that they could stay in communication with each other. So no internet, no telephones, other than, well, I'm not going to say.
Bird messages.
What? What did you say?
The bird messages. Like, you know how they do, like, they put like a piece of paper in the like lake on the and they fly.
I know what you're talking about.
What? Tell me. I'm not sure.
Okay, so it's like in a lot of Disney movies where the bird grabs the envelope and
Oh,
flies
I
it.
see.
Yeah.
The pigeons, carrier pigeons. Yeah. No, that's not how they got information around. They wrote letters, and they had a guy on horseback, and that guy on horseback rode as fast as he could, and when he got to the different colonies, he stopped and delivered the mail.
He left again.
Yeah, exactly. This was called the Pony Express. It was our first mail system. Now, they needed to know, they needed to communicate with each other because they were sort of fighting for their right to be free, right? So they needed to communicate messages throughout the 13 colonies, and that's how they did it. By horseback, the Pony Express. All right, so 1773, England takes away all taxes on everything. Okay, guys, you don't have to pay taxes except on tea. And the tea that you produce in your country or that you get from our country needs to be taxed. So in protest, $1 million of tea was thrown, Hazel shaking her head, was thrown on a ship. It was on a ship, and it was thrown overboard to protest having to pay taxes on the tea. And this is called what, Hazel?
Boston Tea Party.
The Boston Tea Party. They were ported in the Boston Harbor, and they said, we're going to show those people in England, we're going to take this $1 million worth of goods, and we're throwing them overboard. All right, so England responds by shutting down the harbor, and now you can't get goods out by ship. This is further pushing people into out and out war. I wanted to show you this map. Let's see if I can. I have to. One thing that's better about the. Let's see. Okay, nope. Is that there's no glare. Okay, let's see. All right, let me just hold it. I can hold this. Okay. These red lines, here's the world. Here are the 13 colonies in purple. And these red lines show where goods were going and what was going. So they were able to send stuff all over the place. For example, food and wood went to the West Indies and went back and forth. The arrows are going both ways. Tobacco and fish and flour and some other things were going from Boston over to England. Iron, cloth, and weapons were going from Europe over to Africa. So in the 1700s, they were connected. It took a long time to get these goods to places, but they were connected. Okay, let's watch the segment. Wish me luck. Actually, okay, I'm going to leave this on, so if I can't get it going, I can get help from you. So you just watch what I'm doing. Nope.
So is it just top one, right?
I was concerned about the app part, but yeah, that's